Hello and welcome to this tutorial of visualizing COVID recovery using OpenTable data for in-person dining reservations. Now, next couple of minutes, we're going to go through build a visualization that looks like this. First thing you need is to be able to download. You can just right-click and save these files as CSV files. But in order to get to this page, you'll need to go to this particular URL. You can just go to github.com/ideaowl. Click on repositories. Click on this one, Beta City Dive OpenTable. And there you go. You'll get to this page that has links for them. Now, once you've downloaded those files, you need to go to Tableau Public, which is public.tableau.com, and create an account if you haven't already, and just log in. So here I've got my profile open here, and what I want is to be able to create a viz, and it's going to ask for you to connect with data. With the 3 files you've downloaded, which is what I have here, you can just select them, drag them over, and you'll start uploading those files. We can take a look at the contents of those files by dragging them in. So I'm taking the unpivoted OpenTable seated diner data. And you can click here, update now, to see the sort of data that's in here. And this change from 2019 is basically showcasing the change in reservations for in-person dining and where, like, in relative percentage. So this would be 14% less from 2019 and on the same date for Alabama as a state. So you have countries, states, and cities as well. We want to take a look at some of the other files, and in fact we want to connect them all, and one way to do so is to connect them by date. Really, we can take a look at the Alberta statistics for COVID-19, and if I hit update now, you'll see things like the cumulative, the number of lab tests, and the one that we're probably most interested in is the number that are hospitalized and number in ICU, but we'll probably focus on this one for now. These two are currently connected together by means of F1, which I think is just like a number between 1 to however number of records there are. What we want to do is we want to make sure that it's actually connected through date. And so in the COVID data set, the Alberta Open COVID data set, you just want this one instead, and they'll connect that way. And then we also want this, which is a essentially a CSV or spreadsheet that I just entered data from Wikipedia. You can take a look at the data by clicking here, and actually let's just click on this first. Can make sure that these fields are correctly connected. I use the date here, and I also have a date field here as well. If I update now, you'll be able to see that they're just basically notes that I took from Wikipedia and just type them and summarize them in here. One thing we'll do right away is to create an extract, and by doing so, the data from these text files gets extracted in a way that makes it faster and easier for Tableau to work. It takes about 10 seconds here, hopefully, and there you go. That's done, and we can get started with working with the data. I'm going to click on sheet 1, and the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to take a look at how restaurant reservations for in-person dining has changed. To do that, I can drag date up to the column. So this is date under the unpivoted OpenTable dataset. And on this drop down, I'm going to click here, and I actually want, instead of just any given day or year, I want it to be just a month by year time. And now I want to visualize next the change from 2019. So I drag this over here, and you notice that you see this pattern. It kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. Minus 500. Remember, I was saying that this is percentages. What's happening is that the data is kind of being summed up together, regardless of what state or city the data is about. And really what you want to have, if you're just looking for that sort of data, is you want to make this an average. So I'm going to click on average here. And now you can see that by, for example, April 2020 compared to April 2019, there's just it's like a 100% change in terms of reservations for in-person dining. And in July is when so far up to January, it's been the closest it's been to the recovery from what things looked like before. So that's great. But like we know, this is for a variety of different places that OpenTable has data for. So we're going to instead be able to break it up by name. So I'm going to select this and drag it by to make colors be based by name. And you get to see a whole bunch of states, even countries and cities just showing up here. And it's a lot, but we're going to get this as a starting point. We'll just call this the uh, in-person reservation rate. We can just consider this something that we want to keep before we make further changes. And I'm going to duplicate this. You right click on it and hit duplicate. And now you have a new one. But we're gonna, with this one, focus in on just Alberta. So I rename that to be Alberta. And in order to just show Alberta, I need to take the name and make it a filter. So I drag it up from the unpivoted open table dataset and drag it up the name into filters. And you'll see all of them here. I don't want any of them except for Alberta, so I click on all, which deselects everything. Click on Alberta, hit OK. And there you go. You get to see the rate for Alberta, and not surprisingly, this is the same in April 2020. Things compared to the year before were much worse. And for those of us in Alberta, we know that in July and August, things improved. It went 9% up from before the pandemic, and then 14% up from the pandemic before, because this was the open for summer period. So that's a good starting point, and you can use these filters to look and compare to other sorts of data as well. But we want to try and take it a little bit further and compare these rates to hospitalization rates. And how do we do that? Given that the data sets are already connected, one thing we can do is we can take a look at the currently hospitalized numbers by the month and then drag them over here. You get to see there's some sort of pattern, and like, when this goes down, when the reservation rates goes down, it seems like the hospitalizations are up, and it's not causal by any means, but still interesting to see. And instead of having them as two separate charts, currently hospitalized and change from 2019, we can make them into a single dual axis chart. And to do that, you click on the sum, this drop down here, and then you make them dual axis. And you'll see that on the right hand side, currently hospitalized are between 0 and 20K, and there's a lot of negative numbers. Now, we're just using this line really as a little bit of a reference, so I think we're gonna just double click on this legend on the right and make it a fixed one, going from 0 to whatever number was at its maximum before. Close this, and you'll see this distinctive pattern where as hospitalization rates are starting to go up, there's also a dip in reservation rates, and the opposite is true as well. As the reservations start going down, you get to see the rates of reservations go up. Okay, so now that we have this is interesting to kind of compare and contrast. At the same time, it's probably useful to get some more granular data, and in particular, the actions that are taken by the government, and to see what has changed that might have driven these reservations rates low. In order to do that, now the action dates are in days, so I can't really use months. So I'm going to change this from month to day. And here you still see that there is a pattern. It might be not as pronounced because in part this fixed range for the hospitalizations is much lower since it's on a daily basis. So I'm going to change this to, it looks like it's just slightly over 2,000, maybe we'll call it 2,200, and then close this, and there you go. You're basically seeing this rise and fall and the comparison between them. And here's something really interesting too. It goes up 200% in terms of reservation rates. And that's an interesting story. And I can kind of think of it. I don't remember the exact details, but I wouldn't be surprised if this had something to do with the restaurants being open, but dining in, well, sorry, visiting was strongly discouraged. And so that was one way for people to get together. I'm not entirely sure. And that's an interesting story potentially, but not the one I really want to focus on here. The general trend is the thing I am. So we're going to click on this and then click on exclude. And that helps to remove some of these particular outlier data sets. And we're going to do it for December 21st as well. And there you go. Things are a little bit more normalized. You get to see the patterns a little bit more easily. And so the next thing we want to do is the data set that I had put together to type in information. I'm just going to drag this as notes and make sure actually I'm going to be selecting the particular chart, and I want to select the chart that is around current hospitalizations. And then I want to drag this note into size, and what they'll do is they'll create larger circles for us to see which dates have particular notes attached to them. And you'll notice that on this right hand side, or just in this area, you'll see things like this. And in particular, what's interesting is you see this precipitous dip here in terms of reservations. Question is, why is that the case? You can look at some of the notes from before this is happening, and this is slightly after the dip happened, where the vaccine was distributed. But over here, you have restrictions on dine-in foods put there, and that probably explains why that's happening. So I'm going to right-click on this and click Annotate Mark. And it's going to want to give me a lot of additional information that I don't really want. I just want a note itself, so I'm canceling all of this. Hit OK, and now I have an annotation that I can drag up. And you can see that the restrictions come in, and you see this major dip in terms of reservations of in-person dining. The flip side is also interesting too, because right here, you see that this goes way up. And so what happened here? With the data set that we have, I can right click on this, click Annotate Mark, and then do this where I just take a look and see what happened there. And what happened is restaurants reopened at reduced capacity, which makes sense. So now that restaurants are opened, people are starting to make in-person reservations. Okay. And you see ups and downs of different places. I'm going to go through a few. Right over here, it dips quite a bit. So indoor dining is restricted. Make sure I note that or show this up as part of it. Hit OK. And then there you go. You get this. And then you see kind of this major change here from basically zeros, and then all the way suddenly things start moving all the way up. And what's happening here, click on that and just make sure I'm all right. Right clicking this tiny little bubble and then Annotate Mark, keep the note. And this is when the Open for Summer plan was put in place. And there you go. So we've got all these things here. You can just publish it. And once you do, this will be on your profile. I'm just going to call this, this is COVID recovery using OpenTable data. And just make it simple for now. Hit publish. That's done. So when I go back to my profile, here, you should see that this is available, and I think it's going to want to create. I might need to put this in the dashboard, but nevertheless, you should be able to see this particular chart here. And that's it. If you have any suggestions or ideas, please feel free to drop me an email at eugene@ideaowl.com. I'd also love to see what you came up with, so please send me your profile, your dashboard, and finally, I'd suggest that you check out the GitHub's README because it contains some suggestions for what else you could do using this particular data set. Thanks for following along, and I will talk to you later.